Welcome to our fifth club entrepreneur event. For those of you that do not know me, I own a commercial office cleaning company. I began while attending the University of Minnesota Duluth that operates both in Duluth and the Twin Cities region. Regarding Club E, Rick Brimacone right here founded the group back in 2007. Rick has been doing venture capital deals for over 20 years and helps companies refine strategies, assemble resources, and secure funding. Given the intriguing event today, a lot of us are interested in learning about boards, which I'm excited to get to. However, before we get to today's session, I'd like to thank our partners and sponsors, Pure Clean, the Duluth Experience, Swim Creative, and Duluth Screen Printing Company. Some announcements for before next month. Remember to RSVP online. Usually around the first of the month, we have everything out and about, and you can go in and log on. Make sure we have a room for a ticket there. Connecting with Club E on LinkedIn. The Minneapolis group has about 1,500 people in their LinkedIn group, and the Duluth group is definitely growing. It's a good community of people up here. If you're sharing articles, ideas, that is a growing group. Something new that we will be starting with social media this next week is highlighting 2 entrepreneurs each week in a Club E spotlight. A lot of you have probably seen Duluth Loves Local kind of going around taking pictures of food. We're going to go around and learn about business owners' stories, hear a little bit about them. Just a fun way to highlight, bring the community together, get to know some of the people around us and the companies they operate. And that'll be posted on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and our Facebook page. And if you haven't joined our email list, if you want to stay up to date, we send out a few updates throughout the month. Go ahead and write your email on the way out. I'm assuming most of you here do have that taken care of since you're all attending today, but definitely if you haven't done that, do so. And Taylor, if you don't mind raising your hand, if you're interested in being in the Club E Spotlight, go ahead and talk to Taylor, and then within a business day, she'll get you some info on how to sign your company up for that. Next month's Club E event will be on April 20th from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. We're doing a networking night down in the cocktail lounge downstairs. We're going to switch it up and had been encouraged by several people in the community to try a night event, and we're going to go ahead and see how that goes for the month of April, and we look forward to that. As for the May event, we will be doing a topic on mergers and acquisitions, and if you want to say a few things on that, Rick.
Sure. I guess the warm-up for this panel is we did a similar panel in Minneapolis back in December, and it was so well received that we decided to do it again in April. And then in talking to Craig about events that had worked well for the Minneapolis group, we decided to bring this up here, and I would say the same thing about the M&A panel. So Chip Fisher works for a business called Franklin Partners. Chip and I have done business together for a number of years, and I've done a couple of mergers and acquisitions panels in Minneapolis, exit strategy planning, and then kind of gearing up to sell your business. And so we've done that in Minneapolis, well received there, and then we're going to do it here in May. So look forward to seeing you then.
Thank you, Rick. So today I'm excited to introduce our 3 board members that were kind enough to travel up from the Twin Cities. Rick Brimacone, they're all going to give themselves a brief introduction when I pass over the mic. Jim Zulke and Esperanza. I will allow them, like I said, to introduce themselves, and feel free to raise your hand during the Q&A the whole time. If you would like to have any questions mid, feel free to raise a hand and we'll get that going.
Thank you. Thank you very much for attending. As I mentioned, we did a similar panel to this a couple of months back in Minneapolis. Appreciate having the opportunity to come up here and tell you a little bit about being on boards and building and utilizing effective boards. Before we get going, I'll talk a little bit about our backgrounds. Earlier in my career, I did investment research, which is analyzing companies and telling folks what stocks to buy or sell. I then went into investment banking, which is transactional in nature and raising money, selling companies, mergers and acquisitions, venture capital deals, public offerings, et cetera. And then I went into venture capital, and I've been doing venture capital now for about 20 years. Growing companies is what I do with my business. I'm involved with a number of different firms in my portfolio. I've been at 2 different venture capital funds. Earlier in my career, I was at a big fund, and then I did a smaller fund with a couple of other guys called Sherpa Partners, and then I set up my own business, Brimacombe and Associates, about 10 years ago. And so I help entrepreneurs grow their business. As Craig mentioned, I help folks refine strategies, assemble resources, and secure funding. To my right, Jim Zelke and Esperanza Guerrero Anderson. I've interacted with both folks a number of times over the years. They were kind enough to be on our board panel in Minneapolis, kind enough to come up here, and I'll let them tell a little bit about themselves. Jim?
Thanks, Rick. When I first met Rick, we spent most of the time trying to figure out if we were related, believe it or not, because we both come from southern Minnesota and had a similar last name in our lineage. So we're not, but we thought we were. So I have been doing, the last 25 years I've done recruitment work, retained search work, finding executives and various different types of people for companies. Consistently over time, the CEO of the company said, we need help with our board, could you help us there? And what I learned was going and recruiting a board member is nothing like recruiting an employee, because they don't work for the company, they're part-time, but you're really hiring for their expertise, so it's a completely different situation. So a number of years ago, I started another company called Cardinal Board Services. We do everything for boards, from creating boards to recruiting for the boards, to help them figure out what you pay the people to be on the board, all the different services that go around with that, to even helping them get their board started and going to the initial meetings as well. I work 99% with private companies and probably of those private companies, 80% of them are family-owned some way, shape, or form. There's some kind of a family connection there, because that makes it a little bit more interesting. So, so I've done this for a number of years and was fortunate enough to go to the last panel that Rick put on. Widely received, and it was really interesting. And so when he asked me to come up to Duluth, I happily said yes. Esperanza?
My name is Esperanza. My last name is even worse, Guerrero Anderson, but I've been in Minnesota like 35 years. I came from Nicaragua in Central America. I have a very very colorful background, because I started running a private college when I was 21 years old. I came to Minnesota and I got a master in MIS from the University of Minnesota. And when we have a revolution in my country, I moved to Minnesota at the end of '79 and went to work with the U.S. Bank as a lending officer for Latin America, and then ran a nonprofit organization providing management consulting services for minority-owned companies. And then I started a venture capital fund, and that's what I did for about 20 years. About 10 years ago, I went into my own, and I have been a consultant. I have my own consulting company, and what I do is very similar to what Jim does, except that I only work with private companies. I don't work with family-owned companies or public companies. I exclusively work with private companies that want to have what I call an exceptional board of directors, and companies that are willing to commit to my 3-step process. So unlike Jim, I don't recruit one board member. I recruit the whole board of directors. I train the board, I train the management team, I teach them and the management team how to prepare for board of directors meetings. I also train the new board members and give seminar in what it is to be a director, what you should and shouldn't do, how much the company should pay, and pretty much when I recruit this board, I have a work plan that the board of directors has to work in the first 18 months that they are on the board of directors. My clients, my background in this arena is that I have been a board of director of public, private, and nonprofit organization. More than 40 board of directors I have served here in Minnesota. I am currently on 2 private companies board of directors and 2 nonprofit. I teach at the University of St. Thomas corporate governance too. And I do some coaching for entrepreneurs who want to become CEOs and need to know how to relate to the board of directors. And I also coach executives who want to be directors, but only when their companies hire me. So I don't work on a one-on-one person. And I've been doing this for 10 years. I really enjoy it, but because I have so many things going on in my life, Jim has heard this, but I only work 24/7, 24 hours a month, 7 months a year, which is a goal that I am sure some of you will keep in mind. So later on in your life, that's how much you want to work.
It looks like we just have one mic, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a question. As I said, feel free to chime in if you have any other questions in the crowd. They're happy to answer those. In between, I'll ask a kind of assembled guideline here of a handful of useful questions, and then I'll just pass the mic along. And if one speaker wants to go, or if all 3 of you guys want to go, feel free. So the first, starting off, when looking to assemble your board, how do you go about finding your first advisor?
Sure, I'll take that. Esperanza says, just hire me.
No, you, either one of us. That's the first step.
I think the first most important thing is you need to define why you want or need a board. Do you want a board because the company's not growing and we need some outside ideas? Do you want a board because you would like to retire but there's nobody in the company that you think to replace, so the board could maybe help you build that? So you need to understand why you want it or need it, and then that outcome, and then from there you'd say, okay, that's obvious, I need to find somebody that could help us start that growth path again. So then you go off and find that particular person.
Yeah, in my case, most of my clients, remember, my clients are all private companies, no family businesses. Mainly, they have ambitious growth plan. They really want to grow and be very successful. And my clients, I consider them fairly honest with themselves. So they know their limitations, they know how much they know, and more important, they know how much they don't know. So for them to bring highly qualified and experienced people is a way to accelerate the growth plans and reach that growth plan sooner. So, so I agree with you. The first thing is, to be very honest with yourself. Why do I need a board? And so when the selection process comes, you know who of the people that you are going to interview will match your needs.
So after you found that first advisor, who are some of the people that you would look to have on your board? Would you be waiting for that first advisor, or how do you go about finding out who would you like on that board?
So as far as, from my perspective, again, Jim and Esperanza are professional board builders. I have a portfolio of companies that I'm involved in, and sometimes building those boards is part of what I might do. I've been on a number of boards myself, both private companies as well as nonprofits. So these folks are in the business of professionally building boards. Mine more kind of one-off on the companies I'm involved in. So dovetailing off of the first question and tying it into this, I think as a way to kind of dip your toes in the water per se would be to have kind of a formal mentor that you might work with, and not quite as structured as a board, a formal board or a board of advisors. And so if you sought out somebody that might be willing to play that kind of role officially with you as a mentor, I think that's a good way to get your feet wet in the concept of having somebody kind of looking over your shoulder. As far as who and what you want on your board, there's a software business that I'm doing work with and a shareholder in, and they knew the product per se, and technically they knew what was going on, but they both were product-centric engineering type, so very little marketing skills, certainly no management of a company, and truthfully weren't even domain experts in the category that they were in. And so in working with that CEO, the question I asked them was, okay, just dovetailing into what they said, is who would be the right fit? And so for me, I sought out a domain expert, I sought out somebody who had sales and marketing experience, and I sought out a CEO in the software as a service business model space who'd been growing a company rapidly. So and then in this particular instance, this company, we said not so much kind of who it would be, but more from a skill set and what kind of holes we needed to plug in our team.
Two more?
No.
Okay, that was good.
So tying these two questions together, what is the right level of experience for an advisory board member to have? We can go. Do you want to go that or okay?
Did you want to start?
Yep.
Well, the first thing is you have to know why you want your board of directors. And when I come as a consultant to help you to put together your board of directors, I really do an in-depth analysis of the company. I interview everybody in the management team, the accountant, the tax consultant, to figure out exactly where the company is and where the owner or the CEO wants to take the company. And based on that information, I recruit the board members. But the key is that I have some principles that I apply to my consulting practice, and one of them is I believe that board composition follows a strategy. So you don't get board members to the way where you are right now, but where you want to go. So the board members have to have the kind of expertise that will help you to get where you want. For example, I have a client that was in the early startup years, 2-3 years in business, with a very promising business horizon. And the two owners wanted to grow the business, but they wanted to grow the business to position the business to be acquired. So the board of directors that I put together were expert people that knew what to do for a company to grow and be acquired at a significant price. This board did such a wonderful job that 2 years into it, the company was making a lot of money. And my clients, two ladies, decided that they didn't want to sell anymore. They wanted to keep the business. So they approached me and they say, well, now we want to grow the business and keep it. So we let go of the original board of directors, and we brought board members that have the expertise, that know how to grow company fast. So again, the board composition, for me, has to follow the strategy.
Agreed, 100%. I have a simple formula that says 2x. Where are you today? You want to find people that have 2x the experience, that they've been there, done that. And if And if that's the case, they're going to be bringing value from day one there. The second thing I look for is somebody that brings multiple experiences, not just one. So not just the marketing person, but they might be a marketing person, but they might also know about acquisitions, or they might know about raising capital. If the more value, the more, because if we have, like Esperanza says in her example, you get a group of people that have that single experience, and then if the business changes, they're not able to contribute anymore. You're going to have them leave and then get somebody new, but if you can find people with multiple experiences, that's helpful as well.
And then I would add that experience doesn't necessarily mean age. In the era that we're at, the specialization in technology, you can, in a relatively small amount of time, become a domain expert. And so if somebody has a particular skill set or background in a particular industry, doesn't mean they have to be at a certain age to be able to add value to what you do. So chiming in or dovetailing into what the two others said here on this question, if you're out seeking a specific thing, it does not have to necessarily be somebody who's at a certain age level. And then I was on a nonprofit, and the director used the 3 Ds. Again, it was a nonprofit, so the first one was a door opener, and the second one was a doer, and the third one was a donor. And if you all are trying to do things from a profit perspective, the donor not so much important, but people can do different things for you. Opening doors is very valuable. Esperanza and I, driving up, talked about the value of that. Like, what is that one phone call worth, opening that one door? Is it the 5 minutes that it took for the phone call, or is it the $100,000 or $500,000 worth of value that your business was able to leverage with that? So again, the 3 Ds: donor, doer, and door opener.
How many board members should I have, and who should I avoid putting on my board?
Sure. So I typically would like to see minimum size board would be 5 people, 2 insiders, 3 outsiders, 3 independent outsiders. Go ahead. Pardon me?
No, definitely not.
Most nonprofits, because of the 3rd D, donor, tend to be pretty big. And so you might see 15 people, because they're part of, in being on a nonprofit board, the important part is you have to believe in the mission, and you have to give to the mission of that nonprofit. And bring in your own or others. So size-wise, 5 is kind of the minimum, and it's better to always have an odd number, first off, because then there's never a tie vote. The second thing is, 5 is a manageable number, and then the bigger it gets, the harder it is to manage it. But with 3 outsiders, you're going to get some diversity of thought. Last thing, and Esperanza will pipe in as well, generally, you don't want to hire friends, family, or people that you're already paying some other way, like your accountant, your lawyer, people like that. Yes, good point. Good point. There might be in the bylaws. If you set up your bylaws correctly, you say we need at least, you might have a bigger board because you want to have multi-generations on the board, especially if it's a generational company. So you say we need, from the 4th generation, for the 3rd generation, you need at least 1 representative. Because the challenge with multi-generational companies, they're like trees. The branches keep going, and eventually you're going to have enough people that are shareholders in that company that need to be represented and don't have the same view. So you might even in your bylaws with a family-owned business say, we need somebody from each generation, and they have to cycle in and off maybe every 3 years. And so they have to be represented that way.
My rule, again, and I have a lot of principles that I share with my clients, and one of those is exactly no family, no friends, no golf buddies. If you hire me, everybody that I will bring as a prospect for the board of directors is totally independent. Two reasons. One is because you, as the owner, you need to have board members that don't have a preconceived idea about how the business has been done and how the partners or the family works. And second, your management team will be more open to listen to a board of directors that they know the owners didn't bring to the table because they were friends. So it has a lot of value in the way you will be running your company because there is a lot of respect for independent boards. My other principle is if you can hire the expertise, don't bring that person to the board of directors. And I get in trouble because, you know, a lot of my friends are lawyers, and all of them want to be on the board of directors, and they approach me on a one-on-one basis, the value they bring to the board discussion. My idea is if you need legal advice, hire your legal counsel to be the secretary to the board, to take minutes and whatever. But if you can hire a consultant, you don't need that person. You really need, like you say, you need people that have broad experience in the business.
Okay, I want to add one more thing. With the family business, so this is an important nuance as well, and I've seen it happen in some family businesses. You really need that outsiders, independent directors, and have them be the majority, so that they say to the son, you're not the next CEO, your sister is, because dad can't say that. Absolutely is the biggest problem that you find on family companies, is somebody has to pick the successor, or may not even be a family member. But you need the outside independent people saying that, because it's too hard for dad to say it, and because he has to choose, and that's how it's hard.
You know, the Carson Company, and you have a Radisson Hotel in town. This is a huge family-owned business, and it is a very interesting way how they have structured the board of directors. The family controls the board of directors, the majority of the board members, but they have outsiders that are about 40% of the board members are outsiders. But the outsiders don't vote in the key decision, but they can recommend, they can suggest to the board of directors, but only the family can decide, can vote on those decisions. But to attract people, you know, to that level of board of director experience that they need, the outside board of director, when one of them, for whatever reason, steps down or, you know, the term limits, only the outside director can bring an outside board member to replace them. So it's a way to keep the family in control, but at the same time, the outside board members have control of who they bring to the board of directors. It's a very unusual way to have the family happy that they made the decision, but have excellent independent directors.
So I think we haven't really covered it, but there's a distinction between a fiduciary board, a legal board, and a board of advisors. Board of advisors are just there to give their perspectives, not to vote, and do not have a fiduciary responsibility towards the shareholders. And so with an advisory board, which a number of the companies I'm involved in, almost all of them have. Some of them have more formal boards. That's, again, more the world that Jim and Esperanza are in. But on the informal boards, the advisory boards, those folks, just having one or two or three people are fine. You're not technically voting on anything, so that's a different kind of animal. Certainly related here, but a different kind of animal. And I think that where you're looking for, I think Craig said part of the question that we didn't get to, who should I avoid? I think you want to look for somebody who is going to be engaged, and I've seen firsthand where we went out with a company, got a very visible, high-profile industry person that we thought would kind of put us on the map relative to the category we were in, and that person was going on the board. and that person just was not engaged with what we were doing. They thought in theory that it might be kind of fun to do, but they weren't prepared to give us the time or attention or whatever. So I think right off the bat, you need to find somebody who's going to get engaged, and that works for both a fiduciary or a non-fiduciary. And then somebody who can add value, and we talked a little bit about that. And then kind of lastly, at a base level, is are they going to be responsive? You need to get documents signed. You need to set up meetings. You need to have people help with interviews. Whatever you're wanting from that board. And if the person or people that you have on your advisory or fiduciary board are just not at a base level going to give you the amount of time you need, there's a fundamental problem with that.
All my clients, when they are going to have a board of directors, I always recommend them to start with an advisory board of directors. Because when you are an entrepreneur, the CEO, the owner, you are used to do things just the way you want to do it. Even you get your advice from your management team, your accountant, your tax person. Bottom line is you made the decision. And in some cases, the reason you are in business is because you want to be in charge. You want to do it your own way. So try first an advisory board of directors and test the waters and see if you like a body of very experienced, excellent people, challenging your decision and your management team, your assumptions. Sometimes entrepreneurs don't like it. I have a client of mine, a construction company of almost $200 million company, and he wanted to go national, needed outside consultant, advisory board. I came in, I put together. And as part of my engagement, I stayed with the company for 3 board of directors. So my client wanted me to stay for the whole year, so I did. At the 4th board meeting, he said to all of them, and I said, I really appreciate your advice, but you know what? I don't want to have a board anymore. Boom, done. So bye, see you, and that was the end of the advisory board. So I start with the advisory board because you never know if you are going to like it to be challenged.
Actually, I'll grab that one too. And I think that's a big issue. Not everybody wants somebody looking over their shoulder, right? And if you're a business or under the table, and for somebody who's used to doing it their own way, when they want, how they want, with whom they want, to have somebody else chiming in and say, well, what about this? Or why'd you do that? Or did you think of this? All of a sudden, that's a different paradigm, right? So I do think that kind of dipping your toe into the water is a good way to go, and it doesn't work for everybody.
We have enough time for about 3 more questions here. How would you go about compensating your board of advisors or your board?
Why don't we start with them and then I'll fill in the cracks.
Okay. Well, there are a lot of survey out there, mainly for the public companies, but also a little on the smaller companies. But for my clients, I tell them, okay, just figure out how much you are paying to your legal counsel. Legal counsel, no matter how big you are or how small you are, the fees are fairly, I have to do my will, and my husband, it's just me and my husband, and my gosh, the lady that is doing is $550 an hour. So I have to call back and say, could I get a trainee to do it? Because I know exactly what I want to do. So think that could give you an idea of how much you should pay. If you don't have a consultant helping you to figure out how much to pay, think about how much your accountant, your tax person, other consultants are charging you, and figure out how many hours you are expecting this board member to work, and make a concession about more or less. So if you are doing it on your own, I think that could give you a range how much, but always pay, even if advisory board. I don't like, there are a lot of nonprofits that are recruiting board members for free to help their clients, and I am like, you know, if you have a company and you are growing and making money, why should I come and help you and give you my free time?
So dovetailing on that, I believe strongly as well that you need to pay them incredibly, probably not as much as you might think, because people do want to serve on a board. So that's the good news, and I've seen the pay vary greatly, and there's a lot of times no rhyme or reason. The one thing you should think about doing, though, is find creative ways to do it. So pay them for every meeting they come to. It's $500, $1,000, $2,000 for every meeting they come to. Maybe tie them into what the goals are. So if your goal is to grow your profits by 10% per year, and their help gets you there or beyond that, help share in some of that, just like you might do with an employee. The third way is there could be some equity that you could give a board member. A little bit cautious about that, because do you want them now part owner of your company? So a lot of times what we see companies do is they do a phantom, so a tracking equity. Yes, very expensive. The last thing is if your company has a product or service that they can be involved with. Here's an example. A friend of mine was the chairman of Polaris for a number of years. So every board of directors member got 3 pieces of Polaris equipment to use every single year. And that sounds, wow, that's great. But at the same time, they then knew what those products did because they were using the products. Another client I have is a shampoo company. They give their board members $1,000 worth of shampoo. They can give them to their friends, their families, but they're involved in, so using the products or services that your company has, and having your board members experience it, they come to the meeting better knowledged and better prepared.
Me, I never recommend my clients to give away equity. Absolutely, I say no. It's better to pay them well, give them a bonus if at the end of the year the performance of the company, because of their whatever help they gave you, give them something. But in private companies, out of the blue, to have a board member to be part, for me, it makes the relationship different between them. Another thing that I do is that I have, and the way that I structure the pay is a fee for every meeting plus a monthly fee, kind of retainer fee that goes a check every month to the board members. And the idea is, when you are a board member and you get a check every month, even if it is a $1,000 check, it's a little reminder that you are expected to be contributing to the company. So if I get a $1,000, I will ask myself, and what did I do for this company for this? So, but I don't recommend my clients to do equity, not even phantom shares. They are really expensive.
Okay, so I'm going to take the other side of the coin. So they're working with bigger companies. I'm going to go downstream the smaller ones. The currency that smaller companies have is the equity, or at least the currency that they have more of. And so for the early stage companies, equity is usually a piece. I do agree for the larger companies, especially the family owned, there's going to be no fit for an outside shareholder. But for most early stage companies, everybody's thinking like, okay, how can I grow this over the next 3, 5, 10 years and sell it? So the goal, the end game is to sell the business and have a liquidity event. So on the equity side for boards of advisors or fiduciary boards, typically they'll get somewhere between a quarter of a point and a couple of points, depending on what kind of expectations you have and how much value you're looking for. And then that vests over a course of usually a couple of years, 3 or 4, sometimes 2. And so there's a vesting schedule. And so if that board member is not adding value, you can kick them off the board, and then they don't vest any of their equity. But for smaller, earlier stage companies where you're aiming towards a liquidity event, you want those folks incented along with the management team to try to create shareholder value. Again, a little bit different from a stage standpoint, and also the advisors versus fiduciary board. And then the last thing on the cash, especially for the early stage companies, there may not be enough cash available. And you're right, Esperanza, it could be expensive to give up equity. And truthfully, sitting on that side of the table, I hope it is expensive because A, I think I'm worth it, or B, it's expensive because we've created value for the company. And kind of a off-the-cuff comment about that is hopefully you're thinking about costs in thousands, but hopefully talking about value and creating shareholder value more in millions. And so the trade-off of spending a little bit of money, whether it's cash or equity, and then what you get out of it, hopefully, again, is measured in millions versus the cost side being measured in thousands.
All right, for our last question, I know that we have some both private and nonprofit board members in here. How do you transition out a board member that's not working so well if they're in the two different occurrences?
That's part of the services that I offer to my clients because it's a touchy, sensitive issue when somebody's not working. Because even though the board of directors that I create and I put together, you know, every board member that I bring to the table has an incredible background, resume, experience. But what I don't know, and neither my clients know, is the chemistry. How this group of people that don't know each other come together and become a group, a cohesive group. And sometimes you have personalities that don't work well in small groups. So how do you do that? So with my clients, I commit myself that if they get to the point when they need somebody to be asked to leave, they can call me and I can do that for them. But if you are going to have a board of directors, you have to think about this is part of what me as CEO owner is expected to do. That I will have to, one another principle that I have is that the chairperson of the board, of those that I put together, the chairperson has to be an independent, one of the outsider. So the owner and the chairperson are the ones that have to get together and decide how you are going to let go one of the board members.
So my belief is that you have to think about this on the front end. And you have to, in your bylaws, you need to say, you know, if these circumstances happen, you must resign. For example, there could be an age limit. There could be, if you switch jobs, there could be that if you don't attend 2 meetings in a row, maybe you hired this person, they're a no-show at the meetings, but you're paying them. Well, that's no good. You know, so if you can think of what reasons would naturally say this is just not working out, but then just like Esperanza says, you need a strong chairman that is going to look and say, okay, this isn't working out, and the two of you go to that board member and say, this isn't working out, we'd like to have you resign. Another way is you do annual agreements with them. So you're on for 2016. At the end of 2016, we'll automatically renew your contract with this on the board, or we'll review it. And so that at least you want enough meetings so you can see how they're doing. But if they're being disruptive, you need to take them. You need to be able to get them off pretty quickly because it'll go downhill pretty fast if you don't.
You know, in my experience, it's not that board members don't contribute or don't bring something because these are people with experience. most of the time, the reason is the chemistry. People overpowering the board, people that are very negative, people that they just don't click with the management team. And unfortunately, you cannot have those on your bylaws saying, well, if the chemistry doesn't work. But most cases is chemistry. Even in the nonprofit sector, that's probably one of the key reasons that you want to get somebody out, and they just don't become members of the group.
So not anything radically different than what already has been said on that, but typically for the advisory boards and the early stage companies, there's a term, usually, although I do totally agree and get the 1 year, but usually what we do is we'll do a 2, 3, 4, so there's a time period. With that said, because of the equity and the vesting, you're putting power into the hands of the CEO or founder, and so there's a little bit of a short leash. And you would be surprised at how dysfunctional some of these boards can get. Actually, a shocking percentage, as a side question, you two can think about it for a moment. What percentage of boards do you think don't function very well? I guess I would say that on the low side, in my opinion, it might be 10%, and on the high end, maybe even 1 in like 3 where there's dysfunction, and it means you need to work somebody out or what have you. There's just things not working there. And so again, a fixed term is a way to go about it. And then just to reiterate something I said earlier, there was a company that we had a industry legend / guru on the board, and we thought that person was going to put us on the map in the industry because we had that person on the board. That person was not engaged, did not show, and truthfully was more of a disruption than a value. So even though we had this very high profile person we were extremely excited on the front end to have, we ended up asking to leave just because they were not adding value. Question on the dysfunction? Anybody want to chime in?
I'd say I agree with you, at least that.
Which is a very high percentage, unfortunately.
All right, we're reaching our 1 o'clock time. Does anyone in the crowd have a quick question or two? Otherwise, feel free to stick around and chat with the board up here. Any of the guests today. Look for an email coming out for Club E next month, and we look forward to seeing you. Thanks for your time today.